Hi, I'm Reverend Mike Rayson, currently stuck in the United States of America, where not only do we have to cope with COVID-19, but perhaps even worse, coronavirus in an American federal election year. This is Taking Stock, and I'm here again on the request of Reverend Jenkins. For those that don't know me, I'm the co-pastor of a Wesleyan fellowship called Thrive in the Metro East area of St. Louis. We're not a United Methodist church, but we are a church in the tradition of Methodism. All three of our clergy are formed as Wesleyan theologians and pastors. My co-senior pastor, Reverend Lisa Gwillems, is trained within the United Methodist Church, and prior to Thrive Church had been a pastor for 17 years. I'm trained partially in the United Methodist Church and partially in the Uniting Church of Australia, and I've had my feet held to the fire for these past 22 years in ministry. And our assistant pastor, the Reverend Sharon Ortonreath, was trained in the Nazarene Church of North America and was ordained in January of this year. Sharon's a hospice chaplain and brings with her an amazing gift of compassion and love for people in the final stages of their lives. We also are fortunate to have two lay pastors working with us. Pastor Kevin takes care of music and worship, and Pastor Laura, who also happens to be my daughter, is our youth worker. And no, you can't steal her from us. She is, and I know I'm biased, the greatest youth worker in the world. Just weeks after we began Thrive Church in March of 2019, meeting in the local Anglican church, another congregation in our city approached us and gave us, well, to make it legal, we paid them $1, but gave us their beautiful sanctuary, their 2-story education wing, and their manse. To say that we as a church and a fellowship have been blessed beyond measure is an understatement. Even though we, like many of you, are still not hosting Sunday mornings. We're hosting online services on our Facebook page, and every Sunday Pastor Laura holds a virtual youth meeting with our youth. But it's not live. Strangely enough, Laura is currently working for a family in Alaska, which is a long way from St. Louis, as a nanny. Both parents in the family she works for are essential federal government employees who can't be away from their work at this time, but also have 2 small children they need to have taken care of. During this time of COVID-19, these past 6 months, through our partner ministries who work with us and occupy our building, we've fed over 100,000 meals to kids. We've also offered milk boxes each week from a local dairy containing 2 gallons of milk, cream cheese, French onion dip, and my favourite, strawberry flavoured milk. We receive about 350 boxes a week to give away. We've continued to also offer a once-a-month free supermarket where we distribute around 10,000 pounds of groceries on the first Tuesday of each month. And our school food packages, which go home with children from school, when they're in school that is, with enough food to last through a weekend, will fire up when our kids are back actually in school. But during the last school year, we sent about 35,000 meal packs home on Fridays to last a family of 4 for 2 days. Now, we're not the biggest church in the world, and we're not the biggest church in our town. We have around 60 to 75 in attendance on a normal Sunday. But we're growing every week, even though we're on lockdown still. God is truly blessing us. And if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, you can search for Thrive Church Granite City. You'll be able to view all our services and many other things there. As I mentioned earlier, all this and a presidential election have made things a little nuts around here. People seem to have lost the filter between their brains and their mouths. After mentioning online on my own Facebook page, not the church's Facebook page, but my own personal page a few weeks back, the 75th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and making the point that the United States of America is the only country in the world to deploy such devastating weapons, killing around 200,000 civilians and a few thousand active soldiers, one of our founding members took that so personally, they officially complained that I was nuts and she was disgusted, disgusted beyond belief that I, her pastor, would be so disrespectful to the United States and the people that had served in uniform. It seems COVID-19 has not only just removed the filter many people have between their brain and their mouth, it's gone altogether. And it's now a free-for-all time in which everyone receives hateful and threatening messages on places like Facebook for merely expressing an opinion or an idea that's vehemently disagreed with, and publicly so by some. COVID and a presidential election in the same year has just made us all crazy on this side of the pond. Just to give you an idea, American federal elections work a little differently to English elections or elections across the UK. They are held according to the American Constitution every 2 years and always on the first Tuesday in November. On top of federal elections, electing both members of the House and the Senate, every 4 years it gets even crazier when we elect a US president. Apart from special elections where there's been the death of a congressperson or a Senate representative, these elections are, again, always held on exactly the same day, the first Tuesday in November. And this year is not just crazy, it's super crazy. But before I get into the reasons why, and perhaps even reveal my own political leanings in a moment, let me kind of explain the bizarre form of what is considered patriotism in this country. It isn't patriotism, it's blind nationalism, and it's edging closer to fascism every day. Now, I've lived here in the United States 15 years. I'm married to Jennifer, who is an American, and between us we have 5 children. 2 of them, Max, who's almost 4, and Kaylee, who is 9, are both in school but do their lessons on a Chromebook from home. That computer is supplied by the school. We also have Oliver, who turns 20 in a few weeks' time, and Laura, whom I mentioned earlier, who is 23. Sam, my eldest son, died when he was 11. Even 15 years of living here, the nationalism on display is still quite strange to me. The first drama production I went to in the US was Phantom of the Opera. I'd seen it a few times before in Australia and once in the UK. However, before the program began, an unknown voice welcomed us to the show, and instead of asking us to turn off our phones, asked us to be upstanding for the national anthem of the United States. Took me by surprise. I was there to watch Phantom, not sing the national anthem. The United States national anthem is sung at every baseball game, every football game, every theatre show, every non-church kind of gathering. Can you imagine having to do the same in the UK? Every football game, every school play, every political gathering, God save our gracious Queen. Now, I don't presume to know how the mind of the monarchy works, but at a guess, it's probably something like, "I'll just shut up already." Americans are fiercely patriotic, and oftentimes her people cross the line in the sand between loving one's own country and, well, the kind of nationalism that eventually leads to fascism. At the moment, this coming November, the nation faces a choice. All Congress and Senate elections aside, between our current President Donald Trump and his vice presidential nominee Mike Pence, a theological fundamentalist and former governor of the state of Indiana. And on the other side, we have Joe Biden, who served as vice president to President Obama, and Kamala Harris, one of the 2 federal senators from the state of California. Senator Harris is a biracial person of color with a Jamaican dad and an Indian mother, Indian as in the nation of India. And already the mud is flying. You might remember leading into the 2008 election, current President Trump heavily promoted a conspiracy theory that President Obama was ineligible to run as president because he was possibly born in Kenya. Even seeing Obama's birth certificate did not persuade Trump or those that followed him. Obama, by the way, was born in Hawaii. Well, the birther conspiracy, as that was known, has come up again, and again is being heavily promoted by the Republican Party and President Trump. Senator Harris was born in the United States, but neither of her parents were citizens at the time. They were both here on working visas. Harris's mother was a lecturer at a large American university at the time of Kamala's birth. Now, the constitutional law here is plain and simple. If you are born in the United States, your parents' status, legal or undocumented, does not affect your citizenship in the US. But who cares, according to the Republican Party? If it's mud, even fake mud, it's bound to stick anywhere. Over the last few days, the Republicans have met as a party to choose their nominee for president, among other things. It's called a convention, and the Democrats held their convention several days ago, where they formally appointed Biden and Harris as the Democratic ticket this fall. Now, usually, the presidential nomination happens on the final evening of the convention. Trump, however, broke the tradition this year and demanded that he be voted in as the nominee for the Republican Party as the very first agenda item. And believe it or not, the Republican Party have not released a manifesto or any new policies for the next 4 years. This has never happened at a political convention. It means no new ideas, no new policies, no new agendas. The rich stay rich, the poor stay poor, and there ain't nothing new no one is prepared to do anything about. Just 4 more years of what will be scandal, corruption, and the abuse of power. Americans are more divided now than any other time, so far as I know, in history, except perhaps over the issue of slavery during the Civil War in the time of President Lincoln. Let me take just one issue and try and break it down for you. The Republican Party styles itself mainly, actually around 2 issues, guns and abortion. A Republican politician will be quick to tell you that they are the party of anti-abortion, whilst the Democratic Party want abortion to be a right up until the baby is born, and sometimes after the baby is born, with some kind of medical problem or disease. Now that, by the way, is the biggest load of horse poop ever. Democrats don't want that. No Democrat I know thinks this way about the highly sensitive issue of abortion anywhere. That doesn't stop the Republican rhetoric train, though. It is true that the Democrats do support the option of abortion up until, in most cases, 20 weeks. This is known as a pro-choice position. I am personally an advocate of pro-choice. But before you gasp and fall out of your chair, let me explain what I think that means. Firstly, I am a man. I have no right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her own body. Secondly, data shows that under a Democratic White House, the rate of abortion in the United States decreased. Since the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade happened in 1973, there have been 6 Republican presidents and 3 Democratic ones. President George W. Bush, for a while, held all the power. A Republican-controlled House of Congress, a Republican Senate, and a Republican presidency. With that kind of power, abortion could have been radically outlawed immediately. But it never was, and never really came up on his radar, so far as I know. Now, I'd like to see every baby conceived to be brought to full term, but I also realise that sometimes the safety of the mother's health, harsh, low socio-economic circumstances. Remember, there's no safety net in the United States like there is in the UK. There's no guarantee of health insurance or even access to a doctor to have that baby. A version of the NHS in the US is only a pipe dream some of us wish we had. So if a baby is born to a mum without insurance and has, for instance, a hole in her heart that needs immediate surgery, in all likelihood that mother will be bankrupted by the hospital and the doctor. Medical care is still the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States. Friends, keep and treasure your NHS? I believe the answer to such a tricky topic is education, 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 and a complete overhaul of the adoption services provided in the United States. For a family wanting to adopt at the moment, legal fees and other fees can run north of £15,000, roughly $20,000. My point here is, though, if the Republican Party wanted to outlaw abortion, there have been 6 Republican presidents since 1973, when Roe v. Wade became law of the land. That could have made a darn good, or someone could have made a darn good go of it, of shutting down providers forever. But none of those 6 Republican presidents did. Under the Democratic presidencies, Carter, Clinton, and Obama, actually the abortion rate in the United States decreased. This is just one of the things that comes into American politics. Now, I'm not particularly excited about Joe Biden, the Democrat nominee. I certainly empathize with him as a man who has lost a wife and 3 children over his lifetime. I've lost a child myself. However, unlike President Trump, Senator Biden's head can be turned by having smart people around him. In contrast, Trump has made the United States a laughingstock by enacting absurd policies and destroying good political politics that cared for people like children who cross the southern border with their parents and who have no memory of their birth country, be that Mexico or Guatemala or Colombia or wherever it is they were born south of the border. The DREAM Act, an executive order from Obama, supported by the legislative branch of the US government and by the Supreme Court, delayed the deportation of these children, who are now adults, to the country of their birth if caught and found by law enforcement. This was a good, sound, and humane act of American governance until President Trump fired up his crane and came in like a wrecking ball. The Republican Party claims, and this is perhaps their biggest con of all, that Jesus is basically a Republican. You only have to Google Jesus and Trump and you'll find horrible images of Jesus, white Jesus of course, and Trump sitting together at the at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Or you might come across biblical scholars who I'm sure found their advanced theological degrees in Fruit Loop cereal boxes, who have named Trump as the new King Cyrus. You may remember that Cyrus was the king who allowed Nehemiah to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the city. One of Trump's biggest religious supporters is the Reverend Robert Jeffress. He's the senior pastor of one of the largest Southern Baptist churches in North America, First Baptist in Dallas. He thinks that Trump is the answer to every evangelical's prayer for decades. That word, evangelical, has been co-opted and stolen from the Church of Jesus Christ by empire-building, money-hungry, power-seeking men and women who want to be seen as the most prominent pastors in all the land. But in reality, that kind of kingdom will fail. Evangelical, meaning good news bearers, has been stolen by those who proclaim a fake image of Jesus, or in other words, the Antichrist. It is time for us as Christians to reclaim the kingdom of God here and now, and reclaim that title of evangelical back from the likes of Robert Jeffress or Pat Robertson or Kenneth Copeland or even Paula White, a thrice divorced, name it and claim it fundamentalist Pentecostal preacher who is the current president's faith advisor. If you were watching the news a few weeks back, you would have seen scenes of the US military and police shooting tear gas and rubber bullets into a peaceful crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters near the White House in a place called Lafayette Park. This was done by the order of President Trump, so he could walk from the White House through Lafayette Park to the steps of St. John's Episcopal Church, St. John's Anglican Church, for a photo opportunity. St. John's Church has been a place where many politicians and presidents have gone to pray. Trump got his photo opportunity holding an upside-down Bible next to the church sign. What you don't likely know is the rest of the story. The clergy of that church and a few other Anglican clergy who had joined them were using the front steps of St. John's Church as an emergency treatment centre for protesters who themselves had been hit by rubber bullets or sprayed with tear gas. Tear gas containers were deliberately shot onto the steps of St. John's Church to get rid of the clergy and those they were caring for. So what can we take away from the shambles of American supposed democracy? What can we do in the face of one of the largest coronavirus waves in the world, with close to 180,000 deaths now, and a president who still believes a drug that treats lupus will also kill COVID-19? It won't, by the way. Studies have shown this conclusively. Even though our death rate and infection rates are through the roof, Trump is still saying it's only because we test more people in the United States than any other people or any other place in the world. And that's why we have a higher rate of death and infection. But that, my friends, is evidence that it's time to tear down the Tower of Babel erected by an oligarch called Trump and take back the word evangelical to be the bearers of good news. And my Christian friends, remember, if things ever get this bad over the pond, and trust me, Prime Minister Johnson is a pussycat compared to President Trump, I want you to remember one thing and one thing only. In fact, you can start reminding yourself of it today and every day. Even when our political worlds spin out of control, and the rest of the world simply points at the United States and laughs. Not a funny laugh, a pity laugh. Remember this: Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. I'm Reverend Mike Rayson, filling in from the US on Taking Stock, where I can also say that my coronavirus test came back yesterday and I am coronavirus 19 free. God bless.